Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Davis, and my role is a public health educator focusing on the maternal and child health issue of childhood hunger in Venezuela. Childhood hunger has been a public health issue in Venezuela for years. Approximately 2,800 child malnutrition cases were reported in 17 to 2018 for children under 18, and 11,446 children under the age of 1 had died in 2016 alone. This crisis has caused children to die at an alarming rate due to the economy collapse in 2014. Angry crowds ransacking grocery stores, violent riots, and unbearable long lines for basic necessities have distraught local Venezuelan cities. This outcome of the crisis heavily influences childhood hunger and malnutrition. Other factors that heavily influence the relevancy of this issue includes lack of government interventions, food shortages, an increased inflation rate of over 700%, and the social determinants of health. It is evident that children most at risk of experiencing hunger live in particularly low-income neighborhoods, slums, and refugee camps. According to this graph, the security rate has increased from 40, sorry, food scarcity rate has increased from 40 to 80% during 2015 to 2016. This alone shows you the seriousness of this issue and the importance and urgency of addressing it in order to save the lives of children in all Venezuelan communities. So the description of this issue, the ecological model is used for addressing child hunger in Venezuela, as it helps us understand the multiple levels of a social system and the interactions between individuals and environments within the system. The model is broken down by various levels: individual, interpersonal, organizational, community, and policy, and further explains what what helps or hinders this issue within these levels. For the individual level, personal education on feeding alternatives such as breastfeeding and complementary feeding can help families eliminate hunger in the household. Lack of education or resources to these alternatives can get in the way of successfully addressing child hunger. On the interpersonal level, family support could be sought for economic and social support. Perhaps reaching out to families from various cities or communities where the crisis is not as bad, or reaching out to family members who do not have children could assist them in any form of support, whether that be financially, socially, or emotionally. However, poverty can hinder outside family members to help if poverty can help hinder sorry can hinder outside family members to help due to their own lack of financial freedom or lack of other family members in general. For the organizational level, access to breastfeeding education through alternative feeding programs upon birth or during infancy in hospitals or birthing centers can help combat child hunger. However, lack of access to these services due to socioeconomic status and for those living in rural areas is once again another factor that interferes with eliminating childhood hunger and malnutrition. On the community level, community leaders can intervene by creating and implementing essential messages. The purpose of these messages is to communicate assurance to locals or communicate future plans to address this issue. On the other hand, an individual's particular viewpoint on certain community leaders or a general lack of desire from local leaders to contribute towards this issue are two negative contributing factors. For the final level, the policy level, Venezuelan policymakers and decision makers can come together to discuss ways to implement universal school lunches, free of cost for families, very similar to what has been done in the United States. This would ensure all children are getting at least one nutritious meal a day, regardless of socioeconomic difficulties. However, food scarcity is a problematic factor as there continues to be a lack of food to feed most in Venezuela. Proposed interventions. So there are three evidence-based interventions that could potentially decrease child hunger rates in Venezuela. The first intervention is providing free universal meals in schools due to food insecurities from the economy collapse. This evidence-based practice was originally implemented in Vermont and was found to be extremely effective. Therefore, by providing school lunches for all, rather than only for those who enroll in the program, will help decrease child hunger as a whole. The second intervention is an based practice which implements a breastfeeding and complementary feeding education program. This intervention has been successfully proven as it has adapted the greatest outcomes within the shortest period of time when applied in areas within the largest numbers of undernourished children and where the problem is most severe. This intervention is important in order to distribute education on the importance of breastfeeding and complementary feeding, as it is cost effective and a healthy way to ensure adequate child feeding. By implementing breastfeeding programs to increase education and awareness, this will hopefully assist in eliminating child hunger in Venezuela. The final proposed intervention is household food production security. Increasing household food production through sustainably growing fruits and vegetables at home or at school is an effective approach to combat childhood hunger. The purpose of this intervention is to increase the availability of adequate nutritional foods required for healthy child growth. Good practices in household food security interventions include diversified homestead food production, food processing for preservation, and preparation of enriched foods for small children. By teaching children the skills to grow and produce natural, unprocessed foods, this will provide them with the knowledge and skills to be sustainable for the rest of their lives. With that being said, this intervention is another ample approach to eliminating food scarcity, which is one of the many contributing factors to this public health issue. In order to evaluate if these proposed interventions are beneficial to children and family in Venezuela, the overall goal of decreasing child mortality rates is a 5% drop during the first year and every year after that. With that being said, there are 3 appropriate ways to measure the success of each of these proposed interventions. The first evaluation method is conducting a weight assessment in order to see if universal lunches provided in schools help children gain healthy weight. Each children's weight will be entered into a data system where the intervention is implemented, and their weight progress will be tracked every 2 weeks to notice any weight differences. To determine the successfulness of this intervention, the overall goal is to have each child to be within 10 pounds of their average weight for their age group. Another evaluation for the second intervention, a pre and post survey is conducted in order to determine the value of the breastfeeding and complementary feeding education program. Parents, especially mothers, need to complete a survey before the program to assess their prior knowledge of this issue. The second survey will be distributed upon completion of the program. The comparison of the results of the surveys will determine if the program was in fact beneficial to Venezuelan families. The third evaluation for the final intervention is conducting pre and post interviews for children to discuss topics such as what they liked or what they did not like about the program if they believed that they were eating more nutritious meals daily. The results will be compared once the post surveys have been received for further evaluation. So some potential challenges and barriers. When addressing any public health issue, there are always going to be challenges and barriers to face. Working outside of the U.S. can be problematic for several reasons, such as their own policies, laws that can affect combating child hunger and including language barriers. With that being said, policymakers might not see this as a pressing priority With that being said, policymakers might not see this as a pressing issue as we might see in the United States, which is a huge challenge to set any policy or pass any laws that can contribute to eliminating food scarcity. Poverty, food insecurities, and economic collapse are barriers that challenge this issue, as these are the overall root causes of the problem. Another challenge includes any bias or dishonesty in surveys and interviews from children or parents during the evaluation process. This could skew the data and provide indirect, irrelevant data. So this is the logic model that illustrates the inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts of the interventions previously discussed. Please review this model as it clearly displays all the various aspects to consider when combating this public health issue. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Have a wonderful day.